Sammy here, otherwise known as Skullman Throne. I am back to do another Transformers review. It's been a while, I know, since I've done a Transformers review. I already mentioned my reasons why I haven't done any videos in a while in the previous video I did, so I won't mention them here because it just seems a little bit irrelevant. So, with that being said, let's get back to the topic at hand. I'm back for another Transformers review, and this is more or less a revisiting of a character I looked at previously, but the toy that I reviewed I didn't really care that much for. I mentioned the various problems and the criticisms that I have with that toy. So, with that being said, I think it'd be a much better time to look at this character again, but with a much better toy that manages to make this character just as good as he always has been. And it really manages to live up to the reputation in some regards. But at the same time, though, people still have problems with it. I am in that same gap, but at the same time, I want to give this toy a chance because of what it does. So as you can probably already tell from the title below, we are looking at a very popular character today. One who is strong and powerful, who more or less values power and strength over wisdom and compassion, and he is mostly known for being the leader of the Dinobots, for the fact that he has a dislike of Optimus Prime's leadership and thinks that he should be the leader of the Autobots, and that strength would prove greatly over any odd against the Decepticons. That's what we're looking at today. Today we're going to be taking a look at, as the title pretty much says, Generations Grimlock. Quick thoughts on this figure. I like this toy. It's got its problems. Admittedly, everyone has said that it's got a lot of problems in the whole hollowness of it and just the size of it, which, to be fair, the size is a little bit naff, but at the same time, though, I like it because it's the classic Grimlock that we've been wanting for quite some time. I think this is close to what we'll ever get to him. So we'll get to the toy later on. Let's talk a little bit about the character, and regarding that, I mean, everyone knows who Grimlock is. Everyone and their own grandmother at this point probably knows who Grimlock is. I mean, if you're a Transformers fan, you'll know who he is. If not, then why are you watching this video in the first place? But if you don't know who Grimlock is, I think it'd be best to put this guy down and turn to the best bit of information in which you can look at this character and see him for what he is. By that, I mean we are looking at, and you can probably tell where this is going, the guidebook. Again. Yale guidebook. So, with that being said, since I looked at this character before, we will turn to page 13 and 31, in which, in the middle of the book, you will see Grimlock's robot mode right there, and right over here you will see Grimlock transforming into his dinosaur mode and his bio right underneath that. And underneath that it says, "There's a popular misconception that Grimlock is a dumb evolutionary throwback. Maybe it's his taciturn, almost ponderous nature, or his clipped, stunted speech patterns. Or maybe that's just what Grimlock wants you to think. In fact, Grimlock is a shrewd and frighteningly effective warrior and commander with little time for mercy and compassion." That's the problem with this book. I think as good as it is, it doesn't give you the information that you really want to know regarding some of the characters. So with that being said, let's go into a little bit more about who Grimlock is. Grimlock is the leader of a group of Autobots known as the Dinobots, Transformers that turn into dinosaurs. And Grimlock's character really is that he's a bit of a wild card, and that he's huge and powerful, a bit of an egomaniacal, impatient, and willful character. And he kind of views Optimus Prime as being a weak leader, and too afraid to make any of the tough decisions or act on instinct. And Grimlock is one of those characters that really, when faced with a problem, his usual response is to just slice at it with his sword and tear it to pieces with his bare hands. So he's the kind of character that you would immediately think of in that he's the shoot first, ask questions later, or in this case, tear the enemy to pieces and then ask questions later. And at the same time, though, even though he's strong and powerful, he's not that intelligent in some cases. He can often be viewed as being very slow-minded and very simple, but at the same time, though, he is still very strong and powerful. I will not go into so much about who Grimlock is, because there's so much about this character that will take up too much of the video, so I will try and keep this as condensed as much as possible. If you want to know more about the information regarding Grimlock and all that he's done, tier 4 here, that's all I can suggest. But the long and short of Grimlock's role in Transformers is that he's a very popular character. In the cartoon, he was built by Wheeljack and Ratchet along with the other Dinobots, inspired by dinosaur fossils, and of course Grimlock along with Slag and Sludge on a rampage, and over time, Grimlock warmed up to the concept of being under Optimus Prime's command, but at the same time went head-to-head with him at least more than once. In the show, he is voiced by Greg Berger, a very well-known voice actor in that he played Odie from Garfield, Agent K in Men in Black, and he was Corn-Fed Pig in Duckman, and Jack in Final Fantasy X, so he has done a lot of voice work. And over time, as the show went on to the third season, Grimlock went through a bit of a change. After the movie, he kind of became this little bit of an immature character, and stayed a lot of his time in his beast mode, which was mostly for comedic value, but at the same time, the whole strong side of it, while Grimlock was still a strong character in the cartoon, was kind of diminished a little bit and reduced to nothing more than just being a comic relief, which is kind of a shame in the cartoon, but really, that's just how it is. And in the cartoon, he always had a speech pattern in which he always went, "Me Grimlock, bash brains," and stuff like that. That was mostly down to Greg Berger's vocal talents, of course, making this character have a very believable voice to him, which is what made him so well known. In the comics, he's much more different. He's still the same character, except unlike in the cartoon where he was considered stupid, Grimlock is more or less a very intelligent character, and he's a very intelligent character, and he manages to, but at the same time that he still talks in the stunted speech pattern that he does in the cartoon. In which Grimlock was more a bit of a very egomaniacal, mean son of a bitch. When Prime died, thanks to the video game whole program, and thanks to Ethan Zachary, he returned to nominate himself as leader of the Autobots, and proved his worth by leading the Autobots into battle against Trypticon, but of course he was very power-hungry, and anyone who defied his Autobot rule, such as Blaster, was sent to the variable voltage harness to torture various defectors who would not follow his leadership. And when Prime returned, all that was taken care of. Grimlock was placed under Optimus Prime's second in command. He was actually made Optimus' lieutenant. And around the end of the original Marvel Comics run, the original G1 Marvel Comics run, he became an Action Master and led the Autobots briefly into the battle against Bludgeon and his Decepticons. And he managed to serve quite well up until the G2 comic, in which he got rid of the Action Master form, and then he became just as he was before. Dreamwave Comics, same character, really nothing different, except of course, years ago before the war, Grimlock was part of a cage fighting arena when he and Starscream fought beside and against each other on numerous occasions. So, and when the war broke out, he was under Optimus Prime's command as well. So Grimlock has had his fair share of involvement. In the Dreamwave comics, well, I mentioned the War Within story, but in the Dreamwave comics as well, the original run, he was originally under Megatron. He was under Megatron's command for a brief period of time. In the RDW continuity, same character, really nothing different, except of course that he had a couple of stories in Maximum Dinobots as well as the current series at the moment. So this guy has had so much to do. Really, if you want the whole story about Grimlock, go to TF Wiki, read up his whole bio. I've only just mentioned a footnote of what Grimlock has done. There is literally so much to this character that would make him so well known. But really, in a nutshell, that's Grimlock. He's the leader of the Dinobots. He's strong, powerful, very, very violent, and a little bit of a power-hungry maniac. But when he wants to be. But at the same time, though, he's quite a lovable character on numerous occasions. He's still, as I just mentioned, but he's got his good points and he's got his bad points. And that's why I kind of like him. Now, since I've mentioned just a little bit of the character, let's talk about the toy of Generations Grimlock. This is in fact the Fall of Cybertron version of this character, and in which he of course is a T-Rex. Grimlock has always been a Tyrannosaurus Rex, and my personal feelings towards this toy are, I didn't like the original Classics Grimlock that was released during the early run of the Classics line, because the transformation was shit and the toy was just, it didn't feel like Grimlock. This, on the other hand, feels so much like Grimlock. It's amazing. The one thing that I will say about this toy which really stands out is because this, to me, is the Generations Grimlock that we should have had when the Classics line came out. This feels like Grimlock, right down to the alt mode and right down to the robot mode. The detail in this figure is really, really nice, and it looks, A very well managed detail. The paintwork, by the way, this is the Japanese version, by the way, is actually not bad. At the same time, the people have had a lot of complaints with it. I'll get to the complaints regarding this toy in a minute, but for the moment, I just want to talk about the good points. The good points: detail is very good. The lines on the panels work where they need to work. The movement on the arms, because on ball joints as well, the vestigial T-Rex arms, which of course can move on ball joints, and just the alt mode itself looks really, really good. If I had any major complaints with this toy, it's in two areas. The first one is the size. I will say right now, I think Grimlock, this version of Grimlock, should have been a larger toy. And in fact, because I got this toy auto assembly this year, this is the box that it came in. And because the box is quite large, it's the right size for the toy. But I just think this toy should have been a little bit larger, because I would imagine that Grimlock would be, well, towering over the Optimus Prime figures in the Generations line. And the Full of Cybertron line, I will say, has had its ups and downs. This is one that's kind of really there, so the size is a big problem. And the other problem, which everyone's complained about, is the fact that this toy is very, very hollow in both alt mode and robot mode. By that I mean, okay, in the beast mode, the body of the toy is very visible right there, so you can see the joints which lead to the arms, or the legs of the T-Rex mode, and it just, it feels really hollow. It's a very hollow, very light toy. And that's just, it's not good enough. There are ways to fix this, but at the same time though, I just don't like the fact that this toy, while it's pretty good, the alt mode for this toy is actually quite hollow. And that's kind of a disappointment, but I feel that because we're living in that day and age now where plastic is kind of thinning a little bit, and you have to make sure that the plastic that you use is enough to get the toy that you really want. I think that this toy has managed to at least, well, somewhat make it passable for it being a good Grimlock toy. But at the same time, though, just the hollowness of the figure is a big problem. What else? Oh, and also as well that the weapons for the robot mode kind of really stand out. I mean, this does not look natural for a Grimlock to have its weapons hanging off its legs, since they haven't got anywhere else to go. But there you go. So what else can I mention? Oh, the one thing I do like as well, in the video game of Full of Cybertron, Grimlock breathes fire. So he's a fire-breathing dinosaur, and if you press this lever right here at the back of his head, which opens up his mouth, it activates a little LED red light right there, so you can kind of really make this guy have the red fire-breathing mouth that he should have. It's really nice. So it's a nice little gimmick. Gimmicks like that are worth having in Transformers toys, or in any toy for that matter. Now, transforming this toy. I mentioned a while ago in the Classics Grimlock that the transformation for... I'll go through the transformation. I'll talk whilst going through the transformation. The transformation for the Classics Grimlock toy just didn't feel like Grimlock, because the original Grimlock toy from G1 had a very basic transformation. Well, not basic, but it had a very straightforward transformation in that the legs became the tail, and that basically the T-Rex arm, well, the T-Rex legs became the arms for robot mode, and of course the T-Rex head was folded into the back of the robot body itself. And that's a nice little touch. With the Classics toy, you didn't really get that though, and everyone complained about that toy, saying that it looked like a Velociraptor, and it doesn't look like a Velociraptor, but I think it's just a very small version of what Grimlock should have in regards to being a Transformer that's a fucking dinosaur. But there you go. So the transformation with this toy is actually quite simple, and it's really, really nice. And here is the result. And let's look at the head, first of all, of Grimlock. Now, I love the head sculpt of this toy. It really does feel a lot like Grimlock. It looks like Grimlock right down to the red eyes. The faceplate and just the way that the head is designed. And the fact that, of course, he has light piping as well. And it looks quite spectacular, actually. The head, of course, is on ball joints that can rotate the 360 degrees. And the arms, you already know where this is going, can rotate the full 360. and the legs can bend as well. And I mentioned the hollowness in the beast mode. Well, the hollowness in the robot mode is just as unconvincing. Look here. The back of the legs really are very, very hollow. That's not good. I mean, I like the fact that this toy has stayed as close as it can to how Grimlock transformed in G1, the original G1 toy. But at the same time, though, a good transformation to make up for the fact that this toy in its robot form is quite hollow, and it just looks a little bit bare. But with that being said, I still like where this toy has gone. The colors for this figure, like I said in the beast mode, are just what Grimlock is. The whole gold and grey feel, which is quite a nice little touch, and the detail as well is very, very convincing right here. The cybernetics parts right here on the chest, and if you look very, very carefully in the chest, the logo right there, and this camera doesn't really show it very well, in the game Fall of Cybertron, Grimlock was originally part of a team called the Lightning Strike Coalition Force, which was made up of what would eventually be the Dinobots. And I like the fact that the designers of the toy have left that symbol right there on the chest to make sure that he hasn't forgotten who Grimlock used to be part of. And it just looks... It's a nice little touch, I think. So everything, of course, is there where it needs to be. Legs can bend, and arms can move, all the same. Now, let's put the weapons into their rightful places. So, let's get the sword in, and the shield on the arm. And there we go. Actually, I'm going to give this guy a pose, because this guy actually can be it is a very poseable toy, because the arms can move on some good joints right there. And the legs, even though they are hollow, I will say that they're movable for what they are. So, here is Grimlock in one of his many poses that you can have him in. So, where does that leave this toy? It's not bad, and it's not good either. It's that little bit in between. I think it's one of those toys that really, it's almost there. Almost close to being a good toy. It's just the hollowness of the chest and the hollowness of the legs really take this toy too far away from being anything of any great worth to anybody. And I think that because it's been such a long time since we've seen a proper Grimlock toy in the Classics line, this is as close to, I think, what we can get for Grimlock being involved in the Classics toy line. And the result is worth being what it is. And just to see how close they managed to get the character model of how he looked in the game, close to how he looks in the toy, it's a good result, I think. I just think though that the legs and the chest being very hollow are a big downplay in this toy altogether. But honestly, it's that little bit in between. I won't say any further than that. I won't say any more than that. What else? I love the character. What else can you say about Grimlock except that he's a power-hungry, egomaniacal, strong but powerful leader of the Dinobots? And one thing I'll say right now, because we now have Grimlock, I would love to see the rest of the other Dinobots from Fall of Cybertron make their way into the Generations line. And it's not in the plan for next year, but I would like to see that happen, just so we can get a full set of the Dinobots. But at the same time, though, because of the whole plastic problem and everyone's complained about it, I think Grimlock is probably the only Dinobot we will get at the moment until we see the whole team all together. So really, you've got to like what this toy has to offer. Even though it's not perfect, it manages to do its job. And yeah, I think it's worth it, I think. So, there you go. That pretty much leaves us where we are right now. This has been Generations Grimlock. I think this toy, like I said, it's that little bit in between. It's not good, it's not bad. It's in the middle. And that's really where it shall be. And the toy and the character, great character. Who doesn't love Grimlock? I mean, he's everyone's favorite character. And what else can I say? It's good. It's that little bit in between, though, but that's all I'll say. Anyway, so yes, this has been Generations Grimlock, and I am Skullgirl Monfaro. Thanks so much, everybody. Take care. See you all soon.